Former Today Show host Katie Couric has admitted to cutting quotes out of an interview with Ruth Bader Ginsburg that she did back in 2016, where the SCOTUS judge said that kneeling during the national anthem shows a, quote, contempt for a government that has made it possible for their parents and grandparents to live a decent life. Social media users were outraged that Couric chose to withhold this from the public to protect Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. But she openly shared the moral dilemma in her new book.
Joining us now to discuss this is the host of the Katie Halper Show on YouTube, Katie Halper, as well as Useful Idiots. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And your new episode is out with yours truly on it. Everybody should go check that out.
A little cross promotion.
There you go.
Yeah. Conflict of interest. We disclosed it, so there you go.
Yeah, it's disclosed. Yeah. There you go. Transparency is the best disinfectant.
Right. Which Katie Couric could learn from.
Right, except she finally, and this is a thing that bothers me about some of these admissions that people make later in their careers. They only make them when they're then selling a book. It's
exactly.
so you wanted to behave unethically in real time, then you want to own up to it years later, but you want to be paid for owning up to it. What was your read when you heard this? Because when she aired the interview, RBG did get criticism because she aired like half of her comments, which were egregious enough, but she kept out the most egregious elements of it.
Right. So she did say, first of all, I thought the question was really stupid. She asked her if athletes were within their rights to exercise these actions, referring to Kaepernick and others taking the knee. I don't know why that's a question. I mean, isn't that obvious? Isn't that basic?
Apparently it was a good question because it got a great answer. I mean, a great newsworthy answer.
Great newsworthy answer.
But she just stumbled into it.
Yeah. So then Ginsburg, in a very kind of get off my lawn, with a lot of get off my lawn energy, said that it showed contempt for a government that had made it possible for their parents and grandparents to live a decent life. Now, she did keep in the piece that she said it was dumb. But I do think that her cutting it is an interesting decision. And what had happened, by the way, is that Ginsburg people had reached out and said she had misspoken and asked for that part of it to be removed. And then Katie Couric, suffering this crisis, which I guess she didn't really deal with until years later, while, as you said, pushing her own book. So it was a lucrative crisis, I guess. Reached out to two Davids. I don't know if that's her thing, to reach out to two people with the same first name, but she reached out to David Weston, who is the former head of ABC, and she reached out to David Brooks. And David Weston said that she's on the Supreme Court. People should hear what she thinks. David Brooks, however, said that she was elderly and probably didn't understand the question. Now, what's interesting about that is that David Brooks himself engaged in a conflict of interest. I don't know if viewers know about this, but he had to resign from his paid position at the Aspen Institute. The Aspen Institute is, one of its contributors is Facebook, and he would report on Facebook without disclosing this. So then the New York Times, put disclosures in the pieces where he was talking about Facebook and this other project called Weave. But of course, he shouldn't have been doing that in the first place. And then he stayed on as a volunteer at the Aspen Institute. So obviously, there's still going to be a lack of objectivity when it comes to reporting on Facebook. And if the Aspen Institute comes up in the Aspen Institute. So I think it's telling that that's who she sought advice from and that's whose advice she followed. I also think it's interesting, by the way, I was just looking at the article in her book a little bit. She really threw Ashley Banfield under the bus. So I'm now a big Ashley Banfield fan.
I do not care for Katie Couric. I think she's wildly unethical. I remember there was a gun documentary she was involved in that a lot of the people who were interviewed complained that their quotes had been misrepresented. So that this is not. And also that explanation that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is too old to understand the question, isn't she? And
maybe she shouldn't be on the court.
Right, exactly. Wait, what?
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly newsworthy. And I find, I don't probably like both of you. I don't have any problem with the Colin Kaepernick kneeling. I don't agree with the get off my lawn sentiment. But you know what? There are millions of people in the country who feel exactly the way she did. It's like she didn't say the N-word in conversation or something. It wasn't radioactively controversial, which is the way I guess Couric and the people she consulted, and also the people who spoke then later on behalf of RBG all took it, which it clearly is not.
Right. I mean, I think that it's interesting because, I mean, what's interesting about the point you just made is that she did leave in her saying it was dumb and disrespectful.
Yeah.
But then took that other part out. And, something I want to also mention is that, so she also thought that it was, the comments were unworthy of a crusader for equality. That's what she said. So again, this isn't really journalism. I mean, this is just kind of like turns that into a puff piece. And she's like fangirling out with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And then she doesn't want to put in anything that she thinks that certain of her fans who are like-minded fans will be offended by.
Yeah, a lot of the transformation of RBG into this kind of like pop culture icon celebrity type figure was I think very unhealthy. And she is certainly worthy of appreciation for being this very important figure, and she certainly deserves a lot of positive coverage. But it kind of went like several steps beyond that into like she should be portrayed as a superhero for all that. Like we saw this with the ACLU recently, right? When they changed her quotes for that Twitter thing. Like, well, she probably, if she were around today, would have said it exactly the way we're thinking she said it. Like, what are you doing?
Right. And the context here too is that she had scores of Supreme Court clerks over her decades on the court. Only one was black throughout her entire tenure. And so, when you elevate her to this Olympic place in the pantheon of civil rights leaders, then you have to then carve out what she actually says, because it's not going to match with what you've built up of her. So in some ways, I think the caricature and the celebration of her, created this unrealistic expectation that when she couldn't meet that unrealistic expectation because it's not who she is, then Couric had to, edit it so that it would fit.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think she was obviously, very good for gender stuff, but it's not that, when you're a woman, and that's great. I think it's easier to be kind of like a champion for groups to which you belong. So we should be honest about her shortcomings when it comes to racial equality. You don't get to be like, you don't get to be in that club just because you're good on gender issues.
Right. I always thought.
She also, speaking of the deification of her, that whole keep planking thing always weirded me out. That image of her doing planks, and it was like keep planking. I'm like, maybe she deserves to rest, both in life and maybe not be on the Supreme Court anymore. That's the other thing. I mean, this is like the obsession with her, the cult of Ginsburg, probably hurt the left a lot. Like she could have been replaced.
Oh, hugely.
She had the humility to be replaced. Instead, we have we have Trump's
Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah, Amy. Yeah.
Right, and I think that the cult of Ginsburg is what persuaded her to a significant degree to stay on the court. And I always thought, and Katie, you like getting inside the heads of resistance warriors. So tell me if you think this should work. I thought the better argument that people should have been making was, why is this judge blocking the first black president from nominating a replacement for her? Like, why is she trying to push this off to a potential Republican instead?
Well, maybe because for lots of people, these politics are about personal identification and how much someone's journey resonates with you and how much the most powerful woman, her journey, right? I mean, we saw this with Hillary Clinton. Again, it's like alleged feminists who I think sometimes were just more self-interested and projected their own stuff out there and really did, the journey of Hillary Clinton or RBG resonate with them much more than the actual daily reality of women who are not powerful. And that's always the big thing as a feminist, I think, that you should be grappling with and looking at, not the way the most powerful of the most powerful, the creme de la creme of women are faring, but the way the powerless, anonymous, countless women are faring.
Katie, thanks for sharing your perspective on that.
Thank you.
And Ruth Conda forever.
Ruth Conda forever. Absolutely. Tomorrow on Rising, we have another great show planned for you all. Friends of the show, David Sirota, Adam Wren, and Kim Iverson are with us to discuss the news of the day. Plus, Team Rising will be back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our new videos, and we will see you all tomorrow. Ruth Conda forever, yes.
Ruth Conda forever.